Hey guys, so I'm gonna tell you about something, that's like super dangerous that, exists in Fairyland. And, this one is so dangerous that, not, that, Titania, the Queen of Fairies, she has to keep it out of the hands of basically everybody, yeah. Yeah, because she knows of some, she knows of some, tricks, there's someone, thinking, it's a fun prank or, that, has some bit of malice or greed, about it. You know, um, she knows that it could, potentially, lead to, quite a bit of mass destruction that not only destroy her realm, but, basically the entire universe. In fact, it could cause beyond universal destruction as well. Alright, do you want to hear what it is? It's a single grain of rice, okay, that has the ability to self replicate and double every hour, okay? Alright, now. Now, you might think that's not a big deal at first, but are you aware of what will happen? Once it starts replicating. Yeah. At first, the first hour, it's just like 2. Then it, goes to 4, and then, 8. Yeah, but, what happens when it starts getting to, like, really, really big numbers and, all of them start replicating at once? And it keeps doing that over and over and over again. Yeah, in less than 2 days, that's gonna be, that's gonna, basically make a, that's basically gonna basically make the entire realm and the entire, that is gonna basically make the entire realm of, Fairyland as well as, any territories beyond it, kind of, get covered in rice, but in a whole bunch of rice, the size of Jupiter, basically almost immediate, basically. And basically, that's going to be very, very bad because that's going to bury everybody. Yeah, and if it keeps replicating after that, starts going, even further beyond, that could, be potentially, universe ending, yeah. Because it's gonna, because, eventually it's gonna, start making, eventually it's gonna, eventually it's gonna start making the entire universe, basically nothing but carbohydrate, tons and tons of rice. And, when it goes beyond that, it's gonna leak out to other realities. And, gonna start doing it all over again to them. So that's why, this single grain of rice that has the ability to, replicate every hour is, kept under, S plus, clearance. The highest possible security clearance in Fairyland. Yeah, you're basically not allowed to, access it or even look at the key, okay? You're not even allowed to ask about it without, without that, okay? Yeah, there's a very serious reason for that, yeah. Yeah, and you know how this grain of rice got invented? Let's see. Once upon a time, there was, a greedy king who, who was, hassling a farmer to, like, to, like, take their, to, like, take, to, like, take their food away from them and, eventually, try to claim their land. So basically, the farmer, decided, hey, hey, I have this, grain of rice that, doubles every hour. Yeah, and you can have it. And you think about how much rice you're gonna have, when it doubles. Yeah, the king was kind of very impressed by that. Thought the farmer was a fool for parting with it because that means he would basically have the world's biggest supply of rice eventually. However, little did the king know that this was not going to end well for him. You know what happened? At first it escaped from the vaults, and then it started, escaping out into the castle. The king's, staff and, enforcers and, other nobles started panicking because the rice was, getting everywhere and, pretty much crushing everybody. And then eventually it would crush the king. It's crush the king himself and, blow up his castle. And then, and then after that, the farmer, like, got outside, the farmer, stopped the rice from replicating. And, he, fed all the rest of the rice that remained to basically all the people of the village, so that they could never go hungry for quite a while. mm, yeah, and so yeah, that was quite a bit of poetic justice, but given that's why this single grain of rice is kind of sealed away, because the technique to somebody might not use the technique to stop it from replicating, and that could be potentially dangerous. Okay, or somebody could think it's a fun prank to pull in humans, and or somebody could think it's a fun prank to pull in humans, or a human could get their hands on it and not know about its power or any way to stop it, and obviously that's very bad. So that is why the single grain of rice that has the power to replicate every hour is, sealed inside of Fairyland's, highest security vault, and, nobody's allowed to, go near it. You're not allowed to taunt it. You're not allowed to talk about it. You're not allowed to look at the key. You're not allowed to think about, exponential growth around it. Yeah. Yeah, in fact, anybody who tries to replicate this technique, with anything else, yeah, that's very, very heavily frowned upon, and things like that have to be either contained or destroyed, completely, if possible, because obviously that's extremely, extremely, extremely dangerous. Yeah. Yeah, even a technique to be able to replicate it is, forbidden art. Anyway, that's all I have to share for you for now. Goodbye.